Hello, hello, hello again. Bienvenidos, bonjour, welcome, fulcha, the lot. Welcome to another brand new episode of Liam's Life with Jukebox. With the one and only, yours truly, Liam. Now, in this episode, obviously I'm in the same outfit for continuation purposes for episode 6, in which you would have seen me talking about my travels as an examiner. But in this one, I'm going to be giving you some very useful exam tips and advice on how to approach Advanced Trinity Examinations. Now, Advanced Trinity is in the Common European Framework of Reference, or CEFR, is levels C1 and C2. See what I did there? C1, C2. And there are two types of exam with the Trinity offer. There is the GESE, Graded Examinations in Spoken English. GESE's level 10, 11 and 12. At 10 is C1, as I call it, C1.1 or C1 lower. Grade 11, which is C1.2, grade C1 higher. And then grade 12, which is C2, which is the C2 exam. But I'll be talking more about these exams in detail in a moment. Or ISC3, which is a 23-minute exam, which assesses speaking and listening. Okay, so speaking and listening. So there are, for both exams, they both contain the following. You have to do a topic presentation. You have to be ready for a topic discussion. Interactive or collaborative task for ISC. A listening task or an independent listening task for ISC, conversational 2 topics for GESE, chosen by one of 2 lists, or in ISC is you do 1 subject on a range of topics which are the same for GESE 11. So you have 1 of 12 topics, which is quite hard going, if I do say so myself. Now, how do I look at these elements? So we have topic presentation, which I'll begin with first. The topic presentation is like in grades 4 to 9, you do prepare a topic. You prepare a topic of your own choosing with the help of your teacher, and will help you to understand and to help you to use the language effectively, to help you construct, to help you develop your language, your point of view throughout the examination, especially in that part. In the topic presentation, this turns into a 2-part exam. This turns into a 2-part format. You have your presentation, then you have the discussion. Whereas in previous levels, these would go in together. They would integrate together in and out in an exchange and a discussion. Now, what would be my expectations as an examiner, from an examiner and a teacher's point of view? I want students who can pick a topic which can develop an argument, justify an argument, come up with constructive ideas, come up with different approaches to achieve the best potential to create a presentation which lasts for 5 minutes. 5 minutes at GESE, 4 minutes at ISC, at ISC3. What students need to be concretely aware of, need to be extremely aware of, is that you need to structure your presentation accordingly. You need to go with introduction. So what I mean is you need to structure accordingly, that when you're writing your final notes to give to the examiner, a baseline of what you're going to talk about. So you give the examiner some scope to your presentation. That means introduction, general overview of what your topic is, the topic title, which preferably has to have a kind of argument. So some of my students this year who were doing grade 10 and 11 talked about women's health and the women's healthcare system, talked about the history of vaccinations, solid organ transplantation. Very fascinating, may I add, because that was actually fun for me to know. But the thing is, there are lots of topics to choose from, but talk about something that you are passionate about. There's something that will pick the examiner's interest when you're in the exam room. So you have all these different ideas. You have your introduction, main point. Then you have introduction, rewind. introduction, main overview. So that's literally you're introducing the topic. Give it 15-20 seconds. Then you go into your main points, the concrete elements of your arguments, and then your conclusion, and any points to add. All in this part of the exam, and I have experienced this already, is that some students, I don't know how, ended up asking me direct questions during this phase. I had to actually politely tell them, you cannot ask me anything during this part. And that would make me think, is it nerves or something like that? Never ask a direct question to the examiner until the very end. We say, that is the end of my presentation. Have you got any questions? Then you're opening up the conversation. During this part, I would be looking for good structure, good control, good, basically, that it's systematic, that there's actually a good overview here, and that there's good elevation throughout that actually leads to a conclusion and then actually develops into a further discussion. Now, in the discussion phase, what the candidate does need to be prepared for is the examiner can ask them potentially anything in regards to their presentation. Like I would say, you say this, but many may say that. What are your views? And it has to be an exchange where the candidate has to show good control towards the examiner, but it also they share the responsibility. So it's actually showing the fluency, developing an argument, justifying an argument, inferring, deducing. There's lots of different techniques that need to be used in order to develop that. So that's what I would be looking for, especially when it comes into the discussion and it develops naturally and it ends naturally. Also as well, what I normally do is I always have, because I did not have a clock handy, so I had to end up using stopwatch on my phone. I actually turned my timer on my phone on the table around so the student can actually see how much time they have got left to give their presentation. So that means they are ready. Making sure that they are producing the language needed in getting everything in on time before we go into discussion. So discussion is basically an extension of the presentation. Sometimes I have loads of questions to ask. Sometimes I may develop my questions depending on what the student is saying. And sometimes some of my questions are spontaneous and it has to develop into a natural discussion. Then this leads into the interactive task. Now the interactive task, one technique that I always tell students to prepare for, whether they're doing grade 7, 8, 9, ISC 2, or ISC 3, 9, 10, 11, or 10, 11, 12, beg your pardon, ISC 3, is that you have to learn to adapt about different situations. Whether you are a high school learner, university learner, or a working adult, you will see situations every day. Some of the situations that I had to prepare before going on tour, I ended up applying to different situations that I've been in, and it's actually developed into a natural discussion. Now, at grades 10, 11, 12, ISC3, ISC4, I am expecting the student to take a very firm hand here in really going into detail about what I'm talking about. So they're listening very carefully to the prompt. Always listen carefully. Listen carefully to keywords in the prompt. Keywords is a very good thing here. Like my brother is getting married tomorrow, but he's not sure if he wants to get married. That is a lower level one, but it's just an example of how that works. Don't know what to do. And then you say, well, why do you think this? Why is a very common thing to start things off. Oh, I'm really not. Can you elaborate a bit further on that? As my job is to drip drop the information and then it develops into a further discussion. Now, what you need to prepare for in the interactive and the collaborative task, in the 5 minutes in the interactive and the 4 minutes in the collaborative, you have to remember this can go in multiple directions. So you have to make sure it builds up, but it also comes to a natural end. And also to gain high marks in this, they have to make sure that the actual fulfillment of the question has actually been asked, and actually that every detail has been pinpointed and majority of the language requirements have been fulfilled, which to majority of success is really, really good. But never, one thing I would recommend that students do not do in this part is go into a whole, like given their own point of view, they have to get the examiner engaging from the start. So it really helps to really gain that momentum from the get-go. Okay, so that's what you have to look at for the interactive. Now, we're going to get to the listening now. Listening in GESE. Now, listening, you have two types of listening. In type 1, you have two listenings which the examiner reads out once only. I feel, personally, as an examiner, I feel very sorry for students who have to go through this, but you have to listen carefully. Try and listen to different audios, different practices in different accents. That also helps as well. Being from the north of Ireland, obviously my accent's very, very different to that of someone who's maybe from London or from Liverpool. You know, there's different accents there. I'm not trying to insult anybody, so there we go. But the thing is, you have to learn to adapt. Also, one thing I always recommend to teachers who are practicing this, create your own listening situations or listening prompts. Get them to record it, get them to listen, and then write down at the first instance what they think the answer is. Then put the answer. Sometimes I always get them to listen, and then I put the audio up. I put the actual script on the screen after the first listen, and then I get them to listen again, and then does the answer change? The type 1 is quite difficult because they only have a couple of words maybe to fill in the blanks. Okay, so they have a couple of blanks to fill, and there's been a few instances where a student has changed their answers. Like, oh, sorry, no, da 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 da. I was like, okay, thank you. But usually 99% of the time, I take the first answer that's given. I say, I'm so sorry, I don't know. So the listen is quite difficult for type 1. And because they only have one shot, that makes it more difficult. Then we get into type 2, which I would read a monologue, slight along listening. Then also making sure that there's a question. There's a question at the end of it for type 2. What's the speaker's attitude? What's the speaker's opinion? You know, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of different things. And then again, they give their answer and then you move on. To secure a pass in this part, you get 2 out of 3. At least 2 out of 3 to secure a pass. And to get a B, a merit or distinction grade at GESE for listening, you need to get, if you get a merit, it means you've got majority of the answers right, more or less, and then A is directly, okay? Now, in the independent listening for ISE, the listening is quite long, and some young students forget that you do not write anything down on the first listen. So the first time is to understand the general gist. So you're listening very carefully to the context of the listening, which is quite long. I think it's around 3.5 minutes. So it's like they're listening for a lot of information, but it's to understand the overall gist. So there's a good start. They understand the overall gist. That is a good start, which most students can do very well. But then when we get to the detailed part, when I hand the note paper over, then I tell them what exactly they have to look for. So I have a list of points that they have to achieve. And it's like, some of them have like 1 point and then a sub point. So there's like, the more of them they get, including the sub points, the higher the mark will raise. So they only have 60 seconds. Now 60 seconds is not a long time to listen. It's not a long time to sit listening. And after 60 seconds are up, boom, that's it. They have to stop. Usually, if it's like 57 seconds and they're about to wrap up the last sentence, I will let them finish and then that's it. And then done. So it's very, very important that they get the best out of their listening skills, whenever in class. And I would suggest that any teachers who are preparing for them, getting to listen maybe to 1 or 2 short listenings, maybe once a fortnight, just to sort of develop the listening ear gradually, that are suited to C1, B2, whatever relevant level they're doing. Then you have the conversation. Now, conversation is quite fun for this. Now, in ISC, there are 12 subjects, which naturally most students who are doing this will be doing a 2-year course. So you'll be developing these over 2 years. I will be getting to the tips on that in a moment, whereas the ISC, sorry, got tongue-tied there. The ISC subjects for ISC level 3 are the same as list A and B for Trinity GESE 11. So they will combine with the 2. So if you're preparing students who are doing grade 11, You can also prepare students who are doing ISC 3. You can be doing the same topics. Now, in GESE, however, there are two lists. You have List A, you have List B. List A is mainly aimed at younger candidates who are still in high school or maybe early university, whereas List B is the more mature and upper candidate. However, there are some instances where the teacher may feel that this class is adapting better to one list more than the other. Usually I go for if I look at the class and then I pick which list they're studying for. Now, one of the best ways to prepare for the conversation is take, for example, grade 10. So in grade 10, you have, say, the future of the planet. You can get students in individually or in pairs to come up with ideas what they associate with the future of the planet. Then select several words that they think would apply to them. Okay, select 5 or 6 words at random. Come up with a question based on that word or a statement based on that word, and then practice the conversation in pairs. So there's a step-by-step method to help them prepare. And when they are preparing their questions or statements or answers, they can put it together as a bank. And then that also not only helps the teacher, but also helps the students understand that these have to work in both ways. And you can say to them, well, how does that justify an argument? How does, it's developing ideas and concrete ideas to help them better prepare for this examination as well. So that is one way to prepare for it. Now, be aware in ISC 4 and Trinity 12, in this part, the difference is any subject could be asked. Now, I have my own subjects for Trinity 12, which include I have subjects like Literature Old and New. Literature Old and New was one of my favourites because that plays to what I studied, as a younger person as well. There are lots of different things you can talk about which are very, very interesting to young people, certain denying, different things like that. And it's a very, very good way to prepare. But also in ISC 4, remember as well, the exam is very, very similar to that of Trinity 12. So because the ISC 4 exam is slightly different to that of ISC Foundation to 3. So, but always remember, when you are studying for something like that, study every subject going, current affairs, what's happening in the world at the moment. The examiner can literally come in with anything. So just be prepared for that. Now, on the exam day, one of the best things I often find is, I often get asked this, is that make sure if you are doing Trinity 10, 11, 12, IC 3 or 4, that you have a skeleton of your presentation. Do not come in with lots and lots of notes because it's not a script. You want just your basic outline of your presentation. Don't go like point 1, and then a lot of notes. Just say the main point that you're going to talk about. That way it gives the examiner a rough guide as to what you're going to talk about. And also when you're preparing students, tell them that. Don't have them coming up with loads and loads of things. Now, at the beginning, as with all students who are preparing topics, usually have a load of ideas, and then you have to gradually break it down to a small product that lasts the duration. And if I say, oh, that's slightly too long, right, we need to cut something out, or there's something that could be used for the discussion, to sort of amplify what you want to talk about. And in the exam day, yes, naturally you're going to be nervous, but most examiners like myself are very, very nice. I'm very easygoing, and I always give, all examiners are rooting for the student to pass. I am always hoping, I'm always going and there are times I'm looking and saying, are they getting the majority to pass, or are they in one category or in another category? So that also plays a role as well. So just remember that go in, smile, and just try and keep relaxed. And the examiner, usually I crack a joke. Usually I always say, don't worry, be happy, we'll be absolutely fine. And then the exam goes on. And it goes on really, really well as well. So, and I often, as I say, each time I'm examining, I learn more from the students themselves. I learn the more I examine, the more I learn, the more I learn as well. And these sort of tips and ideas, I've helped other centres. And it's also in turn, when speaking to other centres, I've ended up getting ideas from other centres as well, for my own teaching as well with my own students as an examiner too. So to end this episode, I know there are so many tips out there, but there are some of the select tips that I use to help students prepare for Trinity Advanced exams. If you have any questions, please write a comment below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And please remember to like and subscribe to the Untitled Jukebox and pass it on. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Trinity Advanced Exam Tips. And I hope you're all enjoying this nice hot summer weather. Speak to you soon and stay tuned for next week when I'll be coming with episode 8, which is my ABBA Top 10. Okay? Speak to you soon. This is Liam, over and out. Bye!